I'm picking up here looking at lists and data frames and the relationships between those. So if you're following along in the book, this is on page 54. And since I've already done a little bit of work today, what I'm going to do is clear the environment. And let's see, since I just did this, I should have this. It's all equals true. There we go. Okay, so I guess I could look down. It's in the book. All right, so we're going to start off generating a vector with numbers 1 through 10, and we have done this before. So this is just putting together numbers 1 to 10. And we can see our values pretty easily is right there, so I'm not going to display it again. And then we're going to create a data frame and put into this. Okay, we're going to read into the file that we were using before. So I'm going to read.table, and I'll do this with choose.files, but I liked the way that I found to do this before, the way he suggested doing the exercise, to put in the default of the location so it goes directly there, especially if you know where it is. So I've been typing this in enough that I hope that I am right. And this should be in the input files. And this one was called dat_data_frame. And if it's not quite right, then it should let me still choose it. It'll just try to go here automatically, or as a default. So it's going to choose it. So far we've been having headers in all of these. I don't expect it to have any missing data, but I like to get in the habit of telling it how to treat it. I don't want it to do anything with quotes in this, so that should disable it. I'm going to have it treated as though it's tab separated. Remember if comment character was a read or write. To figure that out really quick. Okay, comment character is telling it how it's going to treat characters in the file, so that should work. I've already run this one. Let's see if I did that correctly. Data frame A, it's in my input files. This should do it. You can open. Saying it's outside the window that you can see. Must have typed something wrong. Oh, it's not an underscore here. So I will just select it. Okay, so far so good. So it looks like we have another vector. Actually, I'm going to fix this so that if I do this another time, I have it correctly. Another vector. And we're going to put together this may be a sentence from a corpus file. Period. Interesting. All right, so all separated out. And now we're going to have a list. And he puts parentheses on there so it'll display right away. So I'll do the same thing. And so this is the list function. It's creating it as a list of 3 different types: a vector, a data frame, and another vector. Oh, it's expecting another parenthesis. And I'll put that back where it belongs. So it's displaying it, shows it as a vector, as a data frame with rows and columns, and another data frame. So if I'm reading it, a data frame is also a list itself, which is what the double bracket shows, but then a list can contain different types. And if we want to see the structure of this list that we just created, it tells it's a list of 3. It's an integer vector, a data frame with these observations, and a character vector. Okay, the next thing that we're doing is naming each part of the list. So this one is showing to name it with just plain an equal, a vector, part 2, a data frame, part 3 equals another vector. Oh, so this is creating it as a list again. And so this time creating it a list, so we're just redoing this one here, but this time we're giving them names. And if I'm going to put these parentheses around here. And so this time we can access each one with the $sign in the name. And I'm going to go back to the first one, even though this is not quite how it shows. So notice it's taken away the names. So all we have is the first one, the second one, and the third one. And that's how we'd have to access it. But it looks like we can give names to the list with just part 1, part 2, and part 3. So let's look at a list again. And this did the same thing that it did before, except before we did it all in one step. This time we assigned the names after we already had the list. So that's good to know. The next thing that he has us do is stick to the unlabeled format. So I'm just going to run this one again, and so that, oh, it already displayed. But we can see that it's an unlabeled format. And then we're going to have to work with it with the numbers within the double brackets. So the first thing is, I'll leave a little space in here. If we want to access that first vector, then we have just that first vector there. We want the second part of the list, which is actually a data frame. We have it. And if we want the third one, this is a vector, we have the character vector. So if we want to see what we're actually accessing, seeing if it is a list. Let me just paste it in here. So with the double brackets, and we're saying, okay, is this a list? It looks like a vector here. And is it a list? I would say no. Let's see. All right, so it's false. It's a vector, it's not a list. If we say is this a vector, it should be true because we just saw it, and where is it? It is a vector. It shows it like a vector starting with the 1 in brackets. If we look at the second one and say, he doesn't show this one, we can go ahead and try it, is a list, just because of what he was saying in the text, it should be true. Yes, it is a list. And if we want to look at it and say, okay, is it a data frame? Yes, it should also be a data frame. So it can be both a list and a data frame. And the last one, let's say, is the third one a vector? So this should be this. Character vector starts with our single bracket. It is true. So the last thing that he has us look at is a list with the single bracket 1. And if we look at it, it shows us the double bracket and then the vector within it. And if we say, is this a list? You might try to guess first. Say, what would be your indication? I would say this is the indication that yes, it is a list. Let's see. And it is true. So it would seem to me that when we have a list and we use the single bracket, we're accessing the list with the vector, just a single vector inside it. So that may be significant to note when we're using single brackets and double brackets, although from what I've noticed as I've moved on, it seems to let us default if there's nothing else interfering with using a single bracket or a double bracket. And I think that seems like a good place to stop.